Hello and welcome to the Fossil Arcade podcast. I'm Graeme and I'm back with Ben.
Hello.
How you doing, Ben?
I'm pretty good, thanks.
A few weeks ago, Datadiscs, the video game record reproduction company, put out Sonic CD on vinyl, and you and I are both lifelong Sonic fans, so of course we had to pick it up.
Absolutely.
And that kind of inspired us to kind of have a deeper discussion on Sonic CD and the music specifically, because as I'm sure many people know, Sonic CD has two scores. It has a score that was released with the Japanese and European version, and then when it was released in North America, SEGA of America gave it a new score. The reasons for which are kind of obscure, but generally it just seems like people at SEGA of America didn't really like the Japanese music. There's also some suggestion online that because of the introduction of the Mega-CD / SEGA CD add-on unit, SEGA had built a new recording studio in the US and they wanted to utilize it, so part of the Sonic CD soundtrack supposedly used that studio.
Yeah, I'd read the same thing about the studio, and it's like maybe they needed to justify its existence. So it's like, let's make a new soundtrack. Then I think maybe they wanted a different kind of tone, because the American one's it's quite rocky, lots of guitar, and the Japanese one's much more techno. And they probably figured, you know what, teenagers in America would probably want more rocky sounding music, and that's how we should pitch this thing.
Yeah.
I booted up my save of Sonic CD today, just to see it, and I've realised I didn't get all the time stones. I never actually got them all. That's something I'm yet to achieve.
The only thing I've not done is get all the Metal Sonic hologram projectors.
I think I did that. I think that was one of the only things. No, I think that was one of the only things I did.
The game kind of deliberately keeps the time travel thing secret, when really, does it need to? I don't know. I guess you get a secret ending, so it's good to work out on your own. But then I feel like a lot of people do come to the game and just get stuck in the weeds, like what the hell is this? And the levels are kind of unrefined in their visual design as well.
Yeah, it always felt like a janky Sonic 2 to me, and it was just a sprawling mess because I had no idea what the time travel mechanic was other than making it look different. And it's like, I don't get this.
I think once you work it out though, it's actually really good. But
Yeah, it's true. I mean, it does what it's trying to do well, if you know that's what it's trying to do.
yeah, once you get it, it's like, okay, and now I know that I have to explore and not just dash through. Because if you just try to run to the end, it's really, really hard
Mm.
to get speed up. But yeah, once you know what you're supposed to be doing, it's a really good game. It's just a totally different kind of Sonic game in a way. So we're going to go through soundtrack, basically level by level, stage by stage, and comment on both the Japanese original score, which was also used in the European release, and the North American score. And we're kind of going to whittle down which one we maybe prefer overall, or which one we think suits the game generally. Because I don't know about you, Ben, I kind of flip flop a bit depending on the zone.
Yeah, definitely. It'd be nice to be able to pick and choose your favorites for each stage, really.
In an ideal Sonic CD re-release, there would be an option to check off which one you wanted on each level.
Yeah.
I'm going to lay the Japanese music under first, and then as we're discussing it, I'll transition to the American one as much as I can. So you'll hear Japan first, and then America underneath. So the first level of Sonic CD, Palmtree Panic.
Let's start with the Japanese.
Yeah.
Although actually, going to speak about both of them in one instance here. They both managed to capture this certain kind of vibe really well. This kind of tropical paradise sort of sound. And it's really upbeat and colourful. And it really fits that first stage really well.
You're definitely right in the colour thing. It's rare that you hear a piece of music that's so vibrant. It really feels like it's emitting colour.
Yeah.
And I guess that's partly because when we hear the music, we see the first level of Sonic CD, and they were using all the extra colour channels they had with the Mega CD hardware, so it kind of pairs up with that.
The past version, it has quite a nice, stripped back sort of beachy sound, and really I think it's quite chilled out. I really like how each time zone, how they change it up, because you got the stripped back, laid back sound of the past. The present's much more upbeat and colourful, and then when you get to Good Future, it becomes much more jubilant, with some like jumpy piano and things like that, and it sounds more kind of heavenly, I suppose.
And we should mention as well that although the soundtrack was changed, the past melodies are the same in both Japanese and American because of the way it was programmed on the Mega CD. They left the past music untouched, so often you'll find that the Japanese stages has a kind of familiar motif through all 4 past, present, bad, future, good, future tracks. And then in the US, you'll sometimes it's a little bit jarring when you go to the past, and it's like a completely different kind of sound.
Yeah, I think it's important to have that same kind of motif throughout, because then it feels like you're playing the same level.
Yeah, ideally.
Actually, it's quite interesting about the past tunes, because I wonder if this was either it was a memory thing from the Mega CD hardware, or whether it was actually kind of intentional to have the past music running from the old hardware, because it'd be running on the old PCM chips. They only had, I think it was like 8 channels or something like that, and it was all samples like that, rather than it wasn't actually streaming from the CD itself.
Yeah.
It was just coming from that, and I wonder if that was intentional to have that kind of old school feel, like, hey, this is the old way of doing things, and then when you get to present and future, it's running from a CD, and it's like, this is the future, guys, we've got CD sound.
And the thing is as well is that I never thought about it, like I never played the past stages and thought, oh, this sounds like OG Mega Drive, whereas the other stages sound more CD-like. And it's funny because you would presumably have purchased Sonic CD and the hardware to hear this CD robust new technology.
Yeah.
And like you go to the past and you completely take it for granted, like the Mega Drive's completely capable of putting out great music anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the US Palmtree Panic, I wrote that it sounds like an old lady doing her shopping in a very colourful, kind of bouncy way. And then the Japanese one sounds very much like an epic party night at a retiring home. Because they're sort of comforting and fun and bouncy, but kind of there's something old lady-ish about it at the same time. I don't know what it is. It's like, you know, when you know, like you see old women like dyeing their hair like purple or whatever. It just reminds me of that kind of imagery, because I've written in my notes as well that it evokes a colourful setting.
Like colourful hair.
Yeah, I'm just picturing like an old woman in her Hawaiian shirt, dyed purple hair, in a very colourful kind of fruit aisle at the supermarket, having a blast. I don't know why.
That is a really specific image you've conjured there. I don't know how you got to that.
I've also written that I don't like they use like vocal samples in the American future. And I just think they're so out of place. And it's funny because I'm sure that if they're using a recording studio, that was probably part of the reason that they wanted more vocalization in there. And I just think it kind of wrecks the feel of when you... I really... It's a pet peeve, and it comes a lot from Sonic Dreamcast era. I hate playing stages where there's vocals as you're like playing a level.
Oh wow, you just like pretty much said exactly what I was going to say.
Like, don't get me wrong, right? I like Escape from the City. Like, it's for nostalgic purposes, like City Escape. I like the song. Like, it has good memories attached to it. But generally speaking, I don't like having lyrics, and it goes to the same for this vocal sample.
Yeah, I mean, Palmtree Panic, I think, was one of the better cases of vocal samples in the US version.
Right.
The rest of it, I thought, was just like you kind of get this rocky tune, and then this sort of some of it's a bit gospely sort of sound coming in. It's like, why is that there? And it must purely be because they could do it, so that's why they did it. But I felt exactly the same. I was like, when I'm playing a Sonic game, I stand for there shouldn't be any vocals in there. Like maybe some slightly, but I know it's going to piss off a lot of Sonic Adventure 2 fans out there. But hey,
well, I'll go on record that for better or worse, I really like the Sonic Adventure 2 soundtrack, and maybe it is just nostalgia, but I genuinely really like it. Overall, for Palmtree Panic, would you give your vote to the Japanese?
I would say split down the middle for me, because I really like all versions.
You gotta pick one.
I'll say American just to be different and awkward. What about you?
I would go for the Japanese one because I just think it sounds a lot more adventurous and fun. And moving on to the next stage with like Collision Chaos, they immediately get a different tone in there. Both soundtracks do. But yeah, I feel like with both soundtracks on Collision Chaos, it kind of has a more kind of not, I wouldn't say serious, but for lack of a better word, that's kind of what they're going for. Like the kind of story kind of kicks in a little bit where you meet Amy in stage 2 and she gets kidnapped straight away and you see Metal Sonic for the first time. I think they try and evoke a little bit of that in the Chaos soundtrack.
Yeah, I agree completely. A very kind of 90s pop sound, which is quite good. And yeah, it does feel like, actually, I completely agree with what you're saying. That's kind of the starting off point for the story, and it's got that tone perfectly.
Yeah,
it's got that sort of Michael Jackson sort of vibe and things like that. And of the time, everything was trying to emulate something popular, and I think this is definitely trying to channel that.
The Japanese one is still more bouncy. It's more symphonic and techy, and the American one is kind of like eerie and moody, and that's something that you see more and more as you get through the American ones. Is that it's kind of very kind of mood based rather than melody based, I think.
Yeah, that's true. Collision Chaos, the American version, it just sounds like an 80s action movie.
Yeah, it's sort of like if Arnold Schwarzenegger was sneaking into the enemy base, this is what would be playing.
That's exactly what I had pictured in my head as I was listening to it. And like, that has its place. But in a Sonic game, maybe not so much.
Maybe it's just a bit early for you in terms of mood, because I think it strikes a good message, like I said before, with like kind of introducing the story, if you put stock in that. But perhaps it's just a bit early, a bit too heavy, too fast, maybe.
Yeah. The good future is like, actually I find this a lot of the time with all of the good futures of each stage. They all end up sounding more spacey and reverby.
Yeah.
And like, I always find that puts me off wanting to go to the good future, because I actually generally prefer the bad future.
I mean, in terms of gameplay, like there isn't much purpose to going to the good future sometimes. Like,
other than just to see it,
you get lots of rings there. I guess it makes it easier to go to the special stage.
That's true, but it just makes me want to have a bad future. Sounds really horrible.
Yeah.
Because I think that kind of techno sound actually works quite well with Sonic.
Yeah, I think that the Japanese track for Collision Chaos is probably the most Sonic-ish track overall, as far as the Japanese soundtrack's concerned. While the American one, is like this really moody, kind of almost bleak sound, which is, like I said before, it's maybe just a bit heavy, so early on in the game. To comment on the past theme, which is obviously the same across both releases, it's just like really bouncy, and if anything that makes it more jarring when you go from the present in the US to this like really kind of funky past sort of area, which has like such a great track. It really is.
It's probably my favorite past tune, I think. It's like, sounds like a cute kind of colorful Toyland, but where the toys are starting to turn evil, and I really like that sort of vibe. I think one of the I don't want to say failings, but I'd say one of the negative points about the US soundtrack is I think half of them could be switched around between past, present, or even zone interchangeably.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
It's definitely got its vibe and it does its thing.
You're right, because when I was listening to this in preparation and I put the good future on and the bad future back to back, sometimes I'd just be like, not obviously I could see that there's a difference there. They're not identical, but if you'd put a blindfold on me and ask me like, well, is this the good one or the bad one, then I wouldn't have really known. The Japanese one, it's kind of more clear cut, I think.
Yeah, it needs that concept, and so you can actually tell them apart.
So out of these two, for Collision Chaos, do you prefer American or Japanese?
It's got to be the Japanese one.
Yeah, I would probably agree. I think I don't dislike the American sound at all. I think it's a really good piece of music. I just don't know if it goes with this stage. And that's really what it comes down to, I think, is whether or not it actually fits like what you're seeing. And when you've got like this bright pink, vibrant level, even though, I know Amy gets kidnapped and you get introduced to Metal Sonic, it doesn't need to be as kind of foreboding as it is.
Yeah.
Should we move on to TIDAL Tempest then?
Let's do it.
Let me know what you think.
This is probably my favorite one overall, tune-wise, in the Japanese version.
Right.
And that I find that strange coming from me. I generally prefer something quite catchy. I wouldn't say this isn't catchy, but it's definitely more mellow than the other ones. Like, you've got the echoey drums, and they sound like water drops hitting and stuff like that. And some like kind of house-style piano. And I think that all blends together perfectly, and it fits the stage fantastically. I mean, it sounds a bit sort of icy, as opposed to watery. But, you know, it's got that kind of vibe going about it. And the past version, I think, is, even without all those kind of like reverb and things like that, it still manages to convey that kind of echoey atmosphere, and like a cave. Does it sublimely, I think. Really, really good. I really enjoyed that one. Probably my favourite. Banging.
I've got a similar opinion that the present track, it sounds like, maybe a little bit cliched in this respect, but it's the sound you would expect a stalactite to make if it made music.
Yeah.
And it's very kind of underground cavern-y, and it has a very strong kind of sense of location, much more so than I would normally expect from Sonic music. So I really, really like that. As far as the American one's concerned, it does a similar kind of like, makes an attempt to make it feel underground, with like the xylophones, the sort of dripping water type kind of imitation in the music, which is quite good.
Yeah, it has that kind of old school bass sound, which I like, that kind of funky sound. It's really cool. And the vocals were kind of catchy, but they're still there being vocals, and it's kind of irritating.
Yeah.
It's a shame. So yeah, I don't know. I think the Japanese one for me wins this.
I would probably agree, just because the present one is the one you're probably going to hear most anyway. And it does that kind of underwater sound so well.
So, Quartz Quadrant. Actually, something about this I thought was quite weird. I don't know if it was intentional in any way. Probably not. But I feel like the past music was quite similar to the bad future music from TIDAL Tempest.
Sometimes you hear, I don't know if this is just a product of composition in itself, but sometimes they sound a little bit too similar, where you'd think that they kind of go together. Maybe tracks have been moved around in production, it's hard to say. But I agree that sometimes I hear this one and I'm just like, didn't I hear this track like a couple of minutes ago? Because they do sound quite close.
Yeah, it's strange. It's good though, I like it.
With the Japanese one, I think it's designed to kind of pick you up a bit like mid-game. Like we were saying before, if you view the game as having kind of like a story flowing through it, and especially with the gameplay being quite demanding of you going backwards and forwards in time, potentially you could be playing this game for quite a long time, a long session. So I think that the Japanese soundtrack, they've designed Quartz Quadrant to be a bit kind of bouncy. It's a bit more familiar to Palmtree Panic, just to kind of reinvigorate you a little bit, maybe in like the midpoint of the game.
Yeah,
that's what it feels like.
Bit of levity, isn't it? Yeah, because it's got that cool bass line and that sort of trumpet sound, which I think now is actually somewhat synonymous with Sonic. It's used a lot in the Mania soundtrack. Fits Sonic really well.
I would say that the past music for Quadrant is probably the most Mega Drive sounding track in the entire game. Makes sense.
I think that's why I liked it so much.
It makes sense if it's running from the Mega Drive, then it would sound Mega Drive-y. But yeah, this one has a really classic kind of. You could play it just to be like, well, what does the Mega Drive sound like, and encompass it in one piece of music. And Past from Quartz Quadrant would do that pretty well.
Yeah, definitely. The Good Future was, again, it's that sort of heavenly sound, and it had this really nice accordion melody in it, and this guitar interlude, which was really, really nice, but it just doesn't last long enough, and it's a real shame. That's probably my favourite bit of the entire soundtrack as a whole, is this little guitar interlude. And yeah, it's a good one. I really like it a lot.
I'm quite harsh on the US soundtrack up until this point, but once we get past this stage, it might flip the other way. But I'll say about Quartz Quadrant, I felt that the guitar work was fairly mediocre, and it feels quite sluggish as well, especially for the midpoint of a Sonic game. I would think that they'd want to pick up the pace a bit, but the US Quartz Quadrant is really kind of subdued, I think.
Yeah, it's got that guitar-y sound.
Mm.
They were like, let's go heavy on the distortion here, and that was kind of it. And that's sort of where it stopped, and it just becomes a wall of distorted guitar.
Not great.
Not fantastic, no.
I feel like Japan's going to pick up 2 more points there.
Yeah, I wanted to be like fair about each one and treat them kind of objectively.
But yeah, it's certainly not a bad composition by any stretch. It's just when it's compared directly with something that's fair play. It was originally written with that music. It's hard to kind of stand up against it, at least in our opinion. I've seen plenty of comments online, obviously from North American players who swear by that soundtrack.
Which is fair enough.
I think it just depends on kind of what you're influenced by sometimes.
So, Quartz Quadrant, who do we think is going to get it? Japan?
Japan for me.
Yeah, it's got to be.
But things are going to change, I think, pretty rapidly.
Well, because next we've got Wacky Workbench.
Yeah.
And now, I don't know about you, Graham, but I've never liked the stage. I've never liked the music, whether it's US or Japanese. I don't know why, I've just never liked Wacky Workbench. I think because I always found the level irritating. So when I hear the music, I do remember it. I was like, oh, it's just that stage again.
The stage is one of these levels in Sonic where you bounce around uncontrollably. It's easily the worst stage in Sonic CD.
Yeah.
It's so unrefined and manic that it kind of does bring the game down a little bit, and I find this often happens in Sonic. It's Hilltop Zone in Sonic 2, and it's Mushroom Hill Zone if you want to count Sonic 3 and Knuckles as the one cool game. You'll often get a stage right bang in the middle where it's like
you do without that.
Just that it's just annoying. It's a strange kind of trope.
I'm trying to think of some other ones now.
I wouldn't apply this rule to Sonic 1 necessarily, because it being the first game, there's a lot of stop and start in that.
Yeah.
I mean, for Mania, to be fair, I didn't really like Hydrocity Zone in Mania. I thought that was the weakest stage in that one.
It's quite long from what I remember.
Yes, that's a discussion for another time.
Yeah. So, the past version has that, the electricity sound.
Right.
As part of the music. That's distracting. It's like a hazard sound.
Because you feel like it's a hazard, yeah.
Yeah, and you're like, what's happening? It's do not like it.
For me, I've just written about the Japanese one. It's just that it's very, very high tech.
Yeah.
It doesn't have a strong melody at all. It's just a lot of sound.
Now this is the thing, because they use, I think, for the in the present, definitely, that it's like an arpeggiator sort of sound. Basically, you hit one key and it will play 4 notes in sequence.
I see.
And it's a lot of that, and like it fits the theme, but because of that, you don't actually get a proper melody. It's almost like a randomized sequence of notes. It's
funny too, because not to skip ahead, but Stardust Speedway is a very kind of bouncy, chaotic Sonic level, but done so much better in terms of the stage design. It's funny that Wacky Workbench kind of falls flat so clearly to us.
Yeah. Actually, Wacky Workbench, the good feature for the US version, I think it gets points here, because they actually had some sort of like Steamworks sounds and machinery and stuff like that.
Yeah, the kind of robotic thing.
Yeah, and I really liked that, because that's one where I really felt like it actually had some character, and like that fits the stage perfectly without being irritating.
I think that this one, the US soundtrack for Wacky Workbench, is very emblematic of what the US score is trying to do as a whole. I'm not saying it's the best track, because I haven't really made a decision on that necessarily. But when I listened to it last night, making notes, it really just felt like oh, this is what they were trying to do with this game, and with the American sound. So I think it's really kind of well refined. It's a good piece of music, good vocal integration for a change.
Yes.
And it kind of the chaotic sound is more complementary to the stage, I think, than just an additional irritation with the Japanese one.
Yeah. So, who are you going to give it to?
US? Yeah, I'd say US is better on this one.
I agree. So that's 2 points for me for the US. Out of how many have we done? 4, 5?
Well, I'm racking them up all as one collective, so I haven't scored us separately,
Okay.
but it's all lumped in as one.
Okay.
And so far, the US has got 3 points, and the Japanese has got 7.
Okay. It's got some catching up to do. I wonder if we can do it. And then we're on to Stardust Speedway.
Right, and this is often this is the stage that Sega have uniformly decided that this is the Sonic CD stage. It pops up in Generations and in Mania.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know who's... Well, I think I do know who's making those decisions behind the scenes at Sonic Team, and I wish they would stop picking the same stages for these callbacks. But that's another discussion.
Who?
Yeah, it's Takashi Iizuka.
Yes.
Who's been in charge of Sonic for what feels like 15 years now, and obviously he's the lead producer on a lot of these Sonic games, and whenever they've come round to doing these kind of should we stick Green Hill Zone in? Then they just do, and they always pick the same ones all the time. But if they do a Mania 2, I don't want any more going back to old levels. I want all new stuff. Obviously, they're not going to do a Mania 2 and stick Green Hill Zone in there again, although I wouldn't be surprised. Stardust Speedway, the Japanese music, it's just too many samples. It's just samples, just layers and layers of just completely dissident noises. And I really just found it so annoying when I listened to it last night. It's like this hyperactive elevator music, and the elevator is also filled with annoying people.
Yeah, I mean, it's chaotic.
Yeah.
But I think it fits the stage.
Fair enough.
And it's it works in that regard. So you got the past, and it's got kind of that funky bass sound. It's got some scratchy turntables and a cool melody as well. And then when you get to the present, that's when they start putting in some vocal samples as well. Actually starts to feel like a song, and that's when you start having these it's called an orc hit.
Yes.
Orchestra hits like that. Very, very popular in the 90s.
Yeah, and any kid who had a synthesizer or a keyboard in the 90s putting that sound profile on and just smacking all the keys.
Exactly. and then you get to the good future, and it's like a swirly sounding remix of it. But then it's got that vocal sample all kind of pitched and distorted to make it really disjointed.
It's
melody.
like Cher.
Yeah, it's a bit. I didn't like that.
You're much more articulate about why it sounds the way it does than I am, which is good.
That's handy. So what did you think of the American version?
It's very subdued in comparison to the Japanese one. It's another track that takes a long time to get going, and it almost feels like something you might hear in a Columns game in a way. But I think it suits the stage a bit better than the Japanese one, because it kind of maybe I'm reaching a bit here, but I feel like it kind of foreshadows Metal Sonic's appearance in the later part of the stage very, very well. So I like that techie kind of robot-y sound they put into the American Stardust Speedway a lot more. And you get away from that voice sample, which is good. So
the bad future for Stardust Speedway, the American one, I think is quite good. It definitely has that techno vibe, and I think it's one of the only ones in the US soundtrack that does really capture that techno vibe that the rest of the Japanese soundtrack is doing.
Yeah, I don't feel like you can get away from the technology in the later part of the CD, in the later part of Sonic CD as a game. It becomes very technified. So even though they wanted apparently to move away from techno music, how can you in a way?
Yeah, and it's quite odd considering techno music started in America.
All right.
It's quite odd that they're moving away from that. But strange marketing decisions, perhaps.
What's the famous techno track that you could think of?
Sandstorm by Darude.
See, I don't know it, so.
You do.
Oh, alright, it's that kind of Zombie Nation
It's-
sort of thing, is it?
Yes, exactly.
So would your point go to Japan with Stardust Speedway or America?
It'd be Japan. I really actually quite like it a lot.
Okay, so we're divided on that one. US is on 4 and Japan is on 8. So this is the last kind of proper stage, right?
Yeah, it is. Metallic Madness. So, what do you think? Japanese to start off with.
It's got this kind of low volume Japanglish like vocal samples going on, which I'm guessing come from that song, which I know people like to call Toot Toot Sonic Warrior, right? But it's not actually called that, is it?
You know what? I have no idea what you're talking about. Are you talking about that guy grunting in rhythm?
Yeah, let me fill you in then. Right? So something we haven't mentioned actually is that in Sonic CD in the West, even in Europe, it's known for Sonic Boom, like the theme tune,
Yeah.
the vocal theme tune, which is probably another product of Sega's like fabled sound studio in the North Americas.
I think this is what Sega of America actually wanted, a theme tune that they could pedal around.
Well, I think Sonic Boom is a pretty good song personally. Like it's cheesy, but
Yeah,
I
it's
like
cheesy.
it.
It's cheesy.
In Japan though, they had this song called "You Can Do Anything," which is a similarly fully
Oh my
vocalized
God,
like, pop
yes.
song.
Yeah.
And that's what you're hearing being sampled in Metallic Madness because
that
that's
actually
the
what
theme
it
tune.
is?
Yeah, that's the theme tune of Sonic CD. If I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure. Either way, it's from the same group because I have back when Sonic Adventure 2 came out on Dreamcast, they were celebrating the 10th anniversary of Sonic, which makes you and I feel quite old, I'm sure. But I got my sister bought me a Japanese copy of the Dreamcast game from Japan.
Oh, I remember seeing that.
And it came with a CD, and obviously it was very Japanese-centric CD. It had tracks on like Green Hill Zone and stuff like that, but it also had these pop songs, these Sonic pop songs from Japan, like You Can Do Anything was on there. People always call it Toot Toot Sonic Warrior in like the West because that's one of the key lyrics in the song.
Mm.
I mean, it's kind of sub-Sonic R music, if I dare say it's like that bad. It's just really terrible, and it's probably because they don't really know like the English words that they're singing. It doesn't sound like they're singing it almost like phonetically, and it compounds the issue when you add in unwelcome vocals into the soundtrack. The sampling in Attack Madness is so annoying, and again, I've said this earlier, is that Sonic CD has the potential to be a very, very long game. If you sit down and play it start to end and aim to get every good future and every time stone, you could be there for a long time.
And see every zone if you
Exactly.
wanted to.
So then if you get to Metallic Madness, this annoying music could be like the nail in the coffin, frankly.
It really could.
It's so irritating.
It's too much. That grunting, I didn't realise it was rapping. I thought it was just a guy grunting words, and I didn't realise that's what it was sampling.
The past music is pretty good though.
I love it.
It's
It's like
almost
it's so quick, and it feels like you shouldn't stop moving, otherwise your heart's going to explode.
yeah.
And it's like kind of how you want to feel in a Sonic game. Sometimes.
Yeah, it's a very successful attempt at creating a robotic sound, and it actually uses a sample which is eerily similar to a sound effect that's really present in the Earthbound soundtrack on Super Nintendo.
The thing is with the Mega-CD, because of that PCM chip that it has built in, it does sampling in the same way as the Super Nintendo.
Oh, right. So there's something
a
in
lot
there.
of the sound is it's quite similar. So when you hear like strings and stuff like you would hear in A Link to the Past or something on the Super Nintendo, it's very similar to anything you'd hear like a string arrangement on the Mega-CD. So all very similar.
Would like to discuss Earthbound on its own someday soon.
Yeah, it would be good actually. And then you got the Bad Future, it has that evil laugh and some more weird voice samples about getting Sonic dead or alive or something like that. I couldn't really make it out. It's kind of a shame because it's obscure in this really cool like Halloween sort of melody, which is very dark, and that's my thing all over. So, but yeah, The Good Future, really strange. Such a departure from the rest of it. Didn't really understand.
For the US Metallic Madness, I've written that it's music that a depressed robot might enjoy.
Yeah, that's quite apt, and I think it actually fit the stage really well.
I prefer it to the Japanese, and I'll come right out and say it if that wasn't already apparent. It's very ominous, and the bad future is really strong in Metallic Madness.
Yeah, I think that gets a point for me overall. Like, I really like the past version, but that counts for both US and Japanese, really. So I'm gonna have to give it to the US as well.
All right, 2 points for US and Metallic Madness.
Ooh. Yeah, so the boss music I wrote down, it was like complicated melange of the whole game, and it's sort of fitting, really, because the whole game is just a big complicated melange of ideas.
Because in the Japanese one, it has this kind of laugh at the start,
Yeah,
and it just sounds like some guy's found a cheeky biscuit in his cupboard that he forgot about, and he's just like, oh.
I mean it's good, it's good.
Neither boss music set the world on fire, really.
No,
But I would give a point to the US one, personally. I don't know about you.
I'm gonna say the US one as well. Actually,
Okay.
that's another point for the US.
Something I would like to see in a future Sonic game, if they do like a Mania 2, let's start having like different tracks for different bosses. Like, can we like expand on that in terms of technology? We don't have to save space by having the same boss music for every single level anymore. And then like, you want to have a Robotnik Eggman theme, fine, but we don't have to have the same tune. Like you.
And if you want the same tune, you could remix it or
Exactly,
have alternate
yes.
versions.
I would like that.
That would be cool.
So, including the boss music, Japan and America came out with equal score,
You're kidding.
8 points each.
Wow.
So it's like right down the middle.
Okay, we could have a tie break.
Well, if we do a tie break, I think it comes down to the fact that with the US, you get Sonic Boom, which counts for quite a lot because it's really, really good, even with some of the shortcomings of the North American soundtrack.
I would agree.
Sonic
And
Boom is really strong.
if we're going for theme tunes like that, what was it called, that Japanese one with the rap?
You Can Do Anything.
The You Can Do Anything.
Toot Toot Sonic Warrior.
Yeah, the You Can Do Anything tune, which I did not like. Like, I don't think I've ever listened to it the whole way through, in all honesty.
Do yourself a favour and don't.
Okay, cool, done. So, if we're putting it down to that, then we'll give the US another point.
The US one just squeezes it out because of Boom, yeah.
That's going to annoy a lot of people.
They're welcome to be annoyed. That's fine.
Yeah.
That's what people come to our podcast for, probably.
Probably. I mean, it's nice to look at this objectively, I think, because I think you can get bogged down in a lot of bias of, well, I prefer the Japanese one because it's the original, or I prefer the American one because that's the one I grew up with, or, something like that. Where you actually break it down, pick it apart, as we've just showcased, they can kind of come out even.
Yeah, I think listening to them totally separate from the game is really important because it just helps the music stand on its own. And music written for video games is such an underrated art form, I think, in a way, because you've got to write a piece which can set the mood for a variety of situations, and especially if you apply that to Sonic. Sometimes Sonic can go very, very fast, and then there are other times where in the very same stage there'll be loads of complicated platforming to do. And you've got to write a piece of music which both has speed and also doesn't become irritating or distracting when you have to do this meticulous sort of platforming maneuvers. So I think that...
And that can loop, potentially.
Yeah, and loop. And then if you put Sonic CD into the mix, you have this thing where you've got to write 4 pieces of music for like one stage.
Yeah.
Did you have anything else to add about the vinyl release? Because of course it was the Datadisc's 3 vinyl, kind of 3 record set that got us thinking about Sonic CD in the first place. Datadiscs have been putting out video game records since 2015, and they're always very, very high quality production, I think.
Yeah, it's a great set.
I especially like the way that the special edition like splatter disc has a colour kind of palette which is very similar to the time travel screen in Sonic CD.
Yes, it's loads of little touches like that. Really great. Like actually, when you look inside the sleeve, you can see the time stones.
Yeah.
Like things like that. It's like people might not notice that, but it's in there anyway. I think we're suckers for that kind of thing. So it's a thumbs up from me for that. It's a shame that the US one wasn't on there as well. Probably a licensing thing, but it feels like to not include that is a bit sort of, you're only getting half the soundtrack.
Well, I tried to ask Datadiscs about that, and all I found out from them was that is a Sega decision.
So you need to know, Graham.
Well, it might just be that Sega are being business savvy and know that we'll pay 35 quid for one soundtrack and then 35 quid for another one, like a couple of years down the line.
And we will.
So thanks to everybody who is listening to our Fossil Arcade podcast. Hope you enjoyed our discussion of Sonic CD, and thanks, Ben, for taking part in that rather extended exploration.
No problem, I enjoyed it.
Fossil Arcade is also a YouTube channel. You can go to Fossil Arcade on YouTube and check out all manner of retro recommendations and arcade game playthroughs that we've done, including a playthrough of Sonic CD I did a few weeks ago with Alex, who's the other part of the Fossil Arcade group. So yeah, that's all there for anybody who wants to see it.
And don't forget to check out the website.
Oh yeah, fossilarcade.com.
There it is.
So yeah, thanks a lot for listening. Thank you to Ben.
Thank you very much.
And we'll see you next time.
Bye.